And you're right. This song doesn't really resonate Halloween until you get to the verse with Jamie Lee Curtis in. But no.
Everybody out there, welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. I'm Andy, that's John, and it's time to check out some music. Today will be brought to us by our good friend John, as mentioned a moment ago. John, how are you, sir, and what do you have in store for us today?
Fair to Middling and the Dream Syndicate.
Hey, I saw the first one coming for sure, but it's nice to hear that we're returning to the Dream Syndicate. What's the we've done one episode devoted to them on this channel, right? And that was that live on KEXP
Yeah,
performance.
yeah.
How did I find myself here? I think, is that right? Yeah,
I
who
think,
knows?
well,
Hey,
Greg sent out an invite. I think that's how it all happened. But
here we
yeah,
go.
funny enough, Greg did a coffee episode on Into the Music, John Coltrane Blues, which is an amazing live performance, which got me back into the Dream Syndicate. So I had listened to them in ages. Um, and so I gave you that one, which is a much later version, but still really cool and a cool performance. So I thought I'd go back to the start and their first album. So this is a track called Halloween.
Well, that seems wildly apropos considering that tomorrow is Halloween. So I will
Yeah.
go off and give this thing a spin and come back and let you know if I found it spooktacular. Here we go. Come on. Oh, yeah. I love how just that touch of feedback is like this, it's a bit of a showing of the hand that another guitar is about to come in with, this, what you would presume would be like a bombastic nature, and then that chord hits and fills a void in the soundscape you didn't even know existed until it occupied it, right? So just a great sound and approach. Let's kind of relive that build up again.
There's a place I wanna go. It's right up my street. You might look and see the light shining. Someone you might like to meet. It's Halloween.
I like that. I liked how the chord progression kind of downshifted a little bit, got slightly darker as he went into to sing that titular line, or it's Halloween or whatever. It sounded really nice. I'm gonna pull that back a little bit, maybe a little bit more.
You might look and see the light shining. Someone you might like to meet. It's Halloween.
Yeah.
He says let's go for a ride, and he got a lot to live for, and you're gonna be mine. A hollow rain.
These guitars are great. Ooh. Love that sound. Very pretty. Yeah. I love how that second guitar sort of came back in to fill, again, this space in the music that you didn't know needed to be filled or, you know, was there to be filled. And that guitar is like, the lead guitar, it starts off really pretty, but there's this shades of something boiling underneath, you know what I mean? Starts to flirt with this idea of like a little bit of spastic, you know, strum approach, which makes everything feel a little bit off, but in the best way, right? Like that, just frenetic, almost manic. Yeah. Again.
He says you shouldn't believe the things in papers, they can't come true. And don't believe the things that you see on TV, 'cause they'll never happen to you.
Ooh, choppy.
No, not on Halloween. Two steps forward.
All right, rhythm section. Ooh. Ding, ding.
Two steps forward. Oh, I didn't warn you.
Ooh. This is like a callback to the beginning. This is just like how it started. even down to the staticky sound there at the very end, which is almost like a mirror image of how it started. Granted, it started from nothing and grew into this, but this is like devolving into silence at the end. So instead of like starting from nothing and building and building, building into something, it's at something and then it's dwindling, dwindling, dwindling down to nothing. But it's the same kind of motif musically that they toyed with in the beginning as they did in the end. And I love that. It's a lovely little book ending on how to, start and finish a song. A damn good song at that. I really loved how the guitars were able. I mean, everybody, but the guitars for me really shined in this. They were the heroes of the track, and I thought it was really great how they didn't rush anything, as the time stamp of the song would suggest. But I just it doesn't feel like contrived or manufactured or like adhering to these set guidelines that almost most like rock music does. Indie rock tends to, the right kinds of indie rock tends to like let portions breathe, especially that lead motif that was going on there with it, that started off very beautiful and gentle and then built up to this spastic kind of frantic nature. And then that second guitar coming in with that crashing kind of chord progression along with it. All of it, it didn't seem rushed, and it all made sense. It didn't get too wanky either, where it's just like, all right, you're just doing it for the sake of showing off. It was this nice, like Goldilocks kind of in the middle approach, and I really, really enjoyed that. None of this gave me the spookies or made my skin crawl or anything like that. There were obviously allusions to Halloween. There were some interesting lines though, like don't believe everything you read in the paper. So the stuff that happens on TV is not going to happen to you, which sounds like a way to convince yourself that so awful things aren't going to happen. I don't know if I'm just rushing to judgment or trying to find spooky bits where there aren't any just because of the fact that it's named Halloween, but completely divorced of the name, the allusions to Halloween, or the desire to make this connection that I guess I have. It's just standalone. It's just a really, really good song, and I enjoyed it quite a lot. I'd like to learn a bit more, despite having said all of like it doesn't matter. Trying to extrapolate or pull myself away from the fact that there are these allusions to Halloween and it's obviously Halloween. I am going to come back to that and wonder why it's named that and perhaps what some of the subject matter is that he's alluding to. There's oftentimes this he that he references throughout the lyrics, and I wonder who that is. And I bet you that there's somebody out there who might have that and loads other information related to this band and this song, and that is our good friend John. So let's get back to him.
Bachman Turner Overdrive. He's back. So you've had a listen to Halloween by the Dream Syndicate. What did you make of it all?
Well, hit play, and you use this metaphor or this analogy in a recent episode where you felt like you could hear the music cresting over the hill and the horizon, or something to that effect. And this starts off in that very same vein where galloping like the Gandalf-led Riders of Rohan cresting over the hill at at Helm's Deep. Here comes this music. Go ahead.
To me, it's always a speeded up version of Lawrence of Arabia, Lawrence of Arabia, sorry, because that takes about 10 minutes.
Exactly. You feel it emerging though, and it's becoming closer and closer, but it is. And it doesn't take away from the song, taking its time to kind of get there, comparatively speaking to other songs that begin similarly. So you hear this guitar motif that slowly but surely becomes clearer and seemingly closer. And that guitar motif comes in the form of this slightly tinny but unaffected progression. It's a clean sounding guitar. And the bass and the drums drop at the 33-second mark as the song finally begins to take proper shape. And we get a little bit of foreshadowing of another guitar as the feedback begins to rear its head. And then at the 49-second mark, it comes in blasting with some distorted chords that really fill out the song and add all of this wonderful texture to the track. Soon thereafter, Steve Wynn begins to deliver the opening verse. His delivery is kind of subdued, almost languid, as he sings of a place that you might want to go that is right up his street. He then mentions a light shining and someone you might like to meet. Um, I'm trying to correlate this to Halloween because of the name, but none of this is really seeming like overtly Halloweeny. Not that it's required to, but the name, suggests that it might, but I'm not connecting any, orange and black dots at this point. Just after this line, the chord progression shifts downward, becoming just slightly darker in tone as he delivers the titular line, as he sings, "It's Halloween." From here, the band returns to the verse proper and Wynn sings, he says, "Let's go for a ride." And he says it all the time. You got a lot to live for and you're gonna be mine, I think is what I'm catching here. There is this chord shift again, and this time it's on the line is on Halloween. So we switched that up a little bit. Rather than immediately heading back to the verse, the band continues through the chords and kind of lets it breathe for a little bit, which is one of the features of this song that I love the most. And I'll touch on that in a little bit. And it's this time I at this point when there's no singing and it's kind of just doing its thing, I'm really starting to appreciate a bit more this bouncing but very simple bass line that's happening underneath all that superb guitar stuff. We get to the 241 mark, and there's this lovely plinking strum on the guitar that signals this lovely lead motif that follows. It starts off fairly calm, but sounds beautiful nonetheless. But as it progresses, the guitarist adds these little bits that are almost like spastic outbursts, all frictious and quickly picked. And during this portion, the rhythm guitar comes barreling in with more of those distorted chords that really fills out the soundscape yet again. The lead continues with this frantic and manic motif equipped with errant bends and frenetic strum patterns before gently gliding back into the verse motif. Wynn delivers the next verse in which he sings of this he offering up the advice that you shouldn't believe in the things that's in like I think he makes an allusion to the newspaper or the papers as they can't come true, nor should you believe the things that you see on the television as they'll never happen to you. Then after another allusion to Halloween, the chord progression cuts out around the 457 mark, leaving the rhythm section to provide the canvas over which Wynn sings the final lines of the track, though the guitars occasionally accent the sound with this bit of lovely clean notation. But this is all short-lived as he sings, "Don't say I didn't warn you," just as the guitars come charging back into frame. However, this too only serves as a brief motif, as shortly after this, everything cuts out, save for some of that really pretty clean guitar strumming through the chord progression from the opening of the track. So it is this lovely like mirror image bookending of the track where it begins and then it begins and then it ends, and it adds this. It's just there's symmetry to the way that this is constructed, and I really appreciate that a lot. So, at the 537 mark, the drums and the bass re-enter, which also acts as this little like callback again to the early days of the track, and their sort of their role's original debut in the song. And that somewhat tinny guitar that charmed me from the very beginning, shines briefly, and then we fade to completion. So this was a really great track, and despite it not giving me much of a spooky vibe, as the name might suggest, I loved how rooted in like what I know as indie rock kind of instrumentation and arrangement. This, it's not three minutes and 33 seconds of like cut and paste parts that follow each other in a very predictable pattern. That's not to say that it's wildly experimental, but what it does is it allows all of these parts to kind of breathe and like wash over you. I hate when you listen to a song and you like a part so much, but it only lasts fucking 9 seconds. You know what I mean? You're like, Jesus, why didn't they land like stay on that more? And each one of these parts that I found myself just as I was really enjoying it, it stuck around for a little bit longer than a lot of other tracks might have done or treated those portions. So that was enough to like really win me over because it let me it's like not rushing a really good meal. You take your time, you go through it, you enjoy every facet that went into making it, and it makes the experience all that much more pleasurable. So this song had that going for it, and I couldn't help but think of, they don't sound anything alike, though they are from the same neck of the woods. But the first time I ever gave you Silver Sun pickups, and you listened to Lazy Eye, and they really let that middle section breathe and do all that great indie rock shit. You know what I mean? To the point where that's the point where you knew you had fallen in love with the song, and you were like, oh my god, this is good. There was that middle portion of this had a very similar effect on me, and it was almost like, oh, that's here I go again. Another really cool historical thing where it's like, here's this band from California that did it at some point, clearly a while ago, because this is, I think you mentioned their debut. And here's this band that I've come to love some 20 some years later doing a very similar tactic. And I'm able to connect the dots and it all checks out. It all makes sense. And it makes me enjoy it that much more. So yeah, and I should say the guitars in this really stole the show for me. Both of them, both the harder kind of driving rhythm and the tinny bit of what I assume is also the lead guitarist who appeared later doing that very interesting like the energy that emitted from that lead where it lulls you into thinking it's going to be pretty black and white to doing a lot of like push and pull stuff made me appreciate it that much more. And the time allocated to that portion, as I mentioned, really helped add to that whole vibe as well and that feeling that I got from it. So yeah, I really enjoyed this track. Good stuff. Good stuff, John.
Right, thanks for that, Andy. Yeah, so I chose this because it is such a cool song. There are comparisons with other bands that went before them, which are often used for this album, which I feel the same about them as I do this. In fact, the sound of this is one of the few bands where you hear this, they just sound so cool, and it's hard to describe why it is. There's this feeling that they sound really cool, and this is a track that really underscores this with a big yellow highlight pen. And the interesting thing, you talked about the twin guitars, which were a feature of what you heard before in How Do I Find Myself Here. Different second guitarist. So Steve Wynn had that relationship with this guy, and then later with Jason Victor, who you saw playing with a KPX one. So yeah, really interesting that it's different guys, but still the same outcome. So he plays well with other guitarists.
Yeah, yeah, clearly, and it's probably something that he's looking for. Like when he had to replace the original second guitarist, I'm sure he was looking for that sound of two guitars working together quite harmoniously.
Yeah, and you're right. This song doesn't really resonate Halloween until you get to the verse with Jamie Lee Curtis in. But no, anyway. So so as we've already spoken about, gave Andy a while back an episode, How Do I Find Myself Here, and went into details about the band on that. So I will link it below here. You can go and check all that out, and I won't concentrate on all that. But just so this is from The Days of Wine and Roses, their debut studio album by the American Alternative and the Dream Syndicate. So there. It was released in October 1982 and is described as post-punk, jangle pop, and Paisley Underground. And it's worth noting that this all happened at the same time in different parts of the globe. This formation of what we would call indie rock was happening. And you have three very important, there were others, but three really important movements. And that was Flying Nun Records over in New Zealand, which we've touched on a number of times. postcard records up in Scotland, which we will touch on, and Paisley Underground, of which these guys were seen as one of the forefronts, and which led on to things like, REM doing the same thing. And America's a bigger place, and one record label is going to lead the way, really. Apart from maybe Sub Pop and grunge, but there you go. So the phrase "Days of Wine and Roses" is originally from the poem "Vitae Summa Brevis," as we all know, by the English writer Ernest Dowson, 1867 to 1900. That's 7 o'clock your time. They are not long, the days of wine and roses. Out of a misty dream, our path emerges for a while, then closes within a dream. It's quite nice, actually.
Yeah.
Just to recap, personnel for this: Steve Wynn, guitar vocals; Carl Precoda, the other guitar; Kendra Smith, bass; and Dennis Duck, drums.
Denny
I
Duck.
stopped myself. Yeah. So Steve Wynn wrote all the tracks on this album apart from one, and that track was Halloween, which was written by Carl Pacoda. So there you go. The album is widely regarded as a landmark piece, a real underground indie rock masterpiece, and the cornerstone of the 80s Paisley underground scene. Just like the band they are most compared with, especially with this sound, the Velvet Underground, lead vocals being similar, noisy psychedelic guitar sounds, feedback, and even a cameo female vocal on the album. Just like them, it wasn't a commercial success at all, but was lauded for its influence on alternative and indie rock bands for decades after its release, like you said about the Silver Sun pickups.
Yeah.
In an interview, Steve Wynn was asked what he remembered of recording the album, and he said, "To me, it seems like yesterday. There was no budget, and we got cheaper rates starting at midnight. We got going then and finished the whole record at 8 in the morning, and all went straight to work at our day jobs. That wasn't a weird time to be up at that point in our lives anyway, and it adds to this weird fuzziness and haziness and took the preciousness off. It caught us on a good night." So there's some really interesting bits and pieces from different blogs that have got their slant on it, so I thought I'd read you a few. Sun 13 blog says Halloween offers some of the most gloriously jagged guitar interplay and sits as the spine of the record at just over 6 minutes of Verlaine-esque squalor and musical brilliance. Call it lightning in a bottle, whatever term you want to go with, but the Days of Wine and Roses is a true underground indie rock stroke post-punk masterpiece, and certainly deserves to be heard by more people. And with more articles like this, it might be held in the same regard as Marquee Moon, etc., etc. Uncut Magazine said when this Dream Syndicate's first UK single, "Tell Me When It's Over," was played on Radio 1, it sounded like a sudden beacon of hope, as did REM's Radio Free Europe, and soon Green on Red. More than the Doors and Love records encoded in the Bunnymen's DNA, the Dream Syndicate threw a shameless lifeline to the sharper 60s and 70s music. CCR, Crazy Horse, and Bob Dylan, their US labels noted. The Velvets, every review added, and Big Star and the Stones. Wynn's obsessive purchase of every postcard record he could find in LA absorbed young Scotland's ransacking of recent history too. So there you get the links between the different indie movements. AllMusic said when they recorded their debut album, The Day of Wine and Roses, the Dream Syndicate hadn't even been together a year. They went into that studio less than a month after forming and escaped with the noisy EP that documented their early ragged sound. Now they had to deal with a record label and a producer ready to make an LP that would define an era and live on as one of the most important albums of its time. Mixing the grungy grind of Crazy Horse at their bleakest, the barely tamed energy of Velvet Underground at the wildest, and the abrasive glare of Dylan in his prime, the band unleashed a sound that was fueled by youth, confidence, and an unquenchable desire to make the kind of record they wanted to hear but nobody else was making. And again, linking all these things together. And by Jeff Berger blog, he says, no one seems to know who uttered the famous line about how the Velvet Underground's debut album sold only a few thousand copies, but to all the people who wound up starting bands. What is clear is the statement contains at least a grain of truth. The Velvets have influenced countless rock acts from Bowie to REM, and for more than a few of them, influence would be putting it mildly. I'm thinking of groups like Television, Galaxy 500, and especially the Dream Syndicate, an alt rock outfit that played a key role in California's so-called Paisley underground movement in the 80s. And on Days of Wine and Roses, the sincerest form of flattery often evolves into something original and noteworthy. Definitely Clean, for instance, is as hypnotic as anything Talking Heads ever delivered, and Halloween, the best track, combines a cryptic yet indelible lyric with a propulsive beat, ringing guitars, and a captivating, sinister vocal. So, the lyrics. And he does deliver it in this sort of blend of a bit of Lou Reed and a bit of Bob Dylan, and just subdued and slightly lazy.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
and it's got that, again, it's that sort of coolness to it. There is a place you might want to go. It's right up my street. You might look and see the light shining. Someone you might like to meet. It's Halloween. He says, let's go for a ride. And he says it all the time. You know you've got a lot to live for, and you're going to be mine on Halloween. He says you shouldn't believe the things in papers, they can't come true. And don't believe the things you see on TV because they'll never happen to you. No, no, not on Halloween. And that wonderful guitar break, which is a very interesting guitar break, certainly not
Yeah,
standard.
yeah.
And then they come back in, as you say, gently, and then it goes that does ringing, and then it's 2 steps forward. Don't say I didn't warn you. 2 steps forward. I didn't warn you, and it goes on. So yeah, ArchView's website said it's easy to mythologize the Days of Wine and Roses because this album documents a band whose lineup splintered almost immediately. Producer Chris D doesn't even remember whether it was recorded in one day or two, but he captured the band's sound live in an 8-track studio with minimal overdubs. The tension between lead guitarist Carl Pacodas and drummer Dennis Duck was at the heart of the Days of Wine and Roses. Pacoda's howls of feedback were used as another group might deploy keyboards, both as ornamentation and as the basis for several songs. The Velvet Underground influence is impossible to miss, but its departure from punk and post-punk disdain for classic rock is equally evident. Wynn's vocals borrow from Lou Reed and Bob Dylan. The Dream Syndicate also found common ground between Reed and Neil Young, applying their technique of torturing guitar strings to express intense emotions with as many notes as possible. So there you go. Kind of all sums up all the different people. What I think as well. It's just such a lovely sound. It's almost effortless as well. But it just, and you can hear this sort of. This is kind of one of the blueprints ringing down through the ages for other bands. So yeah, it's great album as well.
Was there
Highly
any
recommended.
was there anything about like the meaning or the subject matter of those lyrics? Because as you read them, it does seem a little bit like I don't want to say like cliche Halloween, but there does seem to be like some at least open for interpretation for there to be some perhaps nefarious motive behind the male figure who's possibly propositioning the female character in the track, if I'm interpreting that correctly, or maybe that's just a glimpse into how I'm looking at it. But like, this like don't believe what you see in the newspaper, don't, the things on TV can't happen to you. Come along with me for what seems like come into my car or come with me on a drive. And then like don't at the end don't say I didn't warn you. I didn't warn you. It's just like what happened in between those verses or those lines.
Yeah, there's definitely some sinister
Something
undertones
is afoot, right?
rather than
Yeah.
overtones. But yeah, but it's left nicely sort of nebulous for you to sort of, but it kind of
Absolutely.
smacks of some sort of slasher movie
Yeah,
outline, could well be,
exactly.
or just a cautionary tale. Um, yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, the album itself is fantastic. They re-released it a while back. I've got the sort of updated version. They whacked on the early EP stuff and some other bits and pieces. But Tell Me When It's Over, the opening track is fantastic. That's what you always say. Then She Remembers, Halloween, When You Smile, and the title track, Day the One and Roses as well. They're all fantastic songs and well worth checking out.
Sounds like it.
So I will wrap things up. Thanks for listening to this, Andy.
Thank you.
Folks out there, tell us what you think. If you like this, please do hit the like button and express your joy in a safe and friendly way. You can also drop comments about this track, this album, this aisle, this life, this universe, whatever you want, to be fair. We love hearing from you and your sort of take on things. So yeah, be really interested if anyone's got little anecdotes and stuff about Dream Syndicate. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. And also, if you haven't subscribed already, we would love to have you on board. We do appreciate everybody who does support the channel. We're ticking on by. The numbers keep going up every day. 2.5, 1.75, that sort of thing. So yeah, we please hop on board. That being said, thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you guys.